Chaos, anarchy, genius. That's the Marx Brothers. But how do you even begin to understand comedians who operated on pure, magnificent madness? You start with a classic example. Think of their iconic Why a Duck routine. Logic twisted, language mangled, absolute hilarity unleashed. It's pure Marx. For the next 5 minutes, we're dissecting that very scene from the Coconuts. Why? Because it's the perfect launch pad into their bewildering world. And it's just the beginning. From vaudeville stages to Hollywood chaos, we're embarking on a 40-minute deep dive into the entire history of Groucho, Chico, Harpo, Zeppo, and Gummo. So, let's kick things off by asking that legendary, baffling question, why a duck?
A lot is too much is a whole lot the same thing. The next time I see you, remind me not to talk to you, will you? All right, maybe. Come over here, Aunt McNally, and I'll explain this thing to you. Now look, this is a map and diagram of the whole coconut section. This whole area is within a radius of approximately 3/4 of a mile. Radius. Is there a remote possibility that you know what radius means? It's a WJZ. Well, I walked right into that one. It's going to be a cinch explaining the rest of this thing to you, I can see that. I catch on quick. That's a rodeo you're thinking of. Look, Einstein, here's Coconut Manor. No matter what you say, this is Coconut Manor. Here's Coconut Manor, here's Coconut Heights, that's a swamp, and right over here where the road forks, that's Coconut Junction. So where you got Coconut Custom? All right, that's on one of the forks. You probably eat with your knife, so you won't have to worry about that. Now, here is the main road leading out of Coconut Manor. That's the road I wish you were on. Now, over here, on this site, we're going to build an eye and ear hospital. This is going to be a site for sore eyes. You understand? That's fine. Now, right over here, this is the residential section. Oh, so people live there, huh? No, that's the stockyards. Now, all along here, this is the riverfront. And all along the river, those are all levees. That's the Jewish neighborhood? Well, we'll pass over that. You're a peach, boy. Now, here is a little peninsula, and here is a viaduct leading over to the mainland. Viaduct? I'm all right. How are you? I say here is a little peninsula, and here is a viaduct leading over to the mainland. All right, viaduct. I'm not playing Ask Me Another. I say that's a viaduct. All right, viaduct. That's what that viaduct. Why you no chicken? Oh, I don't know why I know chicken. I'm a stranger here myself. All I know is that it's a viaduct. You try to cross over there in a chicken, and you'll find out viaduct. I know go someplace. It's deep water. That's viaduct. It's deep water. That's viaduct. Look, Rim. So, suppose you were out horseback riding, and you came to that stream, and you wanted to ford over. You couldn't make it. It's too deep. Well, why do you want to ford if you got a horse? Well, I'm sorry the matter ever came up. All I know is that it's a viaduct. Well, look, all right. I catch on the why a horse, so why a chicken, why this, why that. I don't catch on the why a dog. Now, I was only fooling. I was only fooling. They're going to build a tunnel there in the morning. Now, is that clear to you? Yes, everything except the why a dog. Well, that's fine. Then we can go ahead with this thing. Now, look. I'm going to take you down and show you our cemetery. I've got a waiting list of 50 people at that cemetery just dying to get in, but I like you. You're my friend. I like you, and I'm going to shove you in ahead of all of them. I know you like. I'm going to see that you get a steady position. That's good. And if I can arrange it, it'll be horizontal. Yeah, that's it. Now, remember, when the auction starts, if somebody says $100, I say 200. That's grand. Now, if somebody says 200, I say 300. That's great. Now, you know how to get down there? No, I don't. Now, look, River. You go down there, down that narrow path there, until you come to that little jungle there. You see it? Where those thatch palms are? Yes. And then there's a little clearing there, a little clearing with a wire fence around it. You see that wire fence there? All right, the wire fence. Oh, no. We're not going to go all through that again. You come along with me, you know.
Smack dab in the middle of it all are three brothers orchestrating the madness with pure glee. For close to a century, the Marx Brothers have been the undisputed kings of anarchy. I mean, they were more than just comedians. They were a revolutionary force that crashed through the walls of polite society, armed with insults, a harp, and a phony Italian accent. They dismantled logic, ridiculed authority, and turned the world upside down.
Who are you? I'm fine, thanks. Who are you?
Now, the Marx Brothers weren't just some spontaneous act that popped up on the vaudeville stage. No. They were the carefully constructed result of some very specific familial and cultural dynamics. Their story? Well, it's a classic American immigrant tale. Struggle, ambition, and sticking it to the man, all masterminded by one of the most powerful stage mothers ever. To really get their anarchic comedy, you gotta understand the home where that anarchy was born. A place built on a father's charming, shall we say, inadequacy, and a mother's unstoppable drive.
Uh-huh.
The comedic engine of the Marx Brothers was fueled by the stark duality of their parental heritage. On one side was the Marx family, rooted in the old-world trades of Alsace, France. On the other, the Schonbergs, a German family with performance in their very DNA. The paternal line, led by Simon Marx, was one of humble, working-class origins. Born on October 23, 1859, in the Alsatian town of Merzwiller, Simon's family was part of a long-established Jewish community. His parents, Simon Marx and Adele Levi, were itinerant door-to-door vendors, a nomadic existence that saw their children born in various villages across the region. Upon immigrating to America, Simon, who became known as Samuel, or Sam, worked as a tailor. By all accounts, including those of his sons, he was a terrible one. Groucho would later quip that his father's shears were perpetually in the local pawn shop, resulting in ill-fitting suits. What Sam lacked in tailoring skill, he made up for in culinary talent and affability. He was a gifted cook, often using a well-prepared meal to placate landlords and delay rent payments. Known affectionately as Frenchie by his sons due to his Alsatian birth, Sam Marx represented a lovable but ultimately ineffectual patriarch, a figure of authority so gentle and inept that he practically invited ridicule, a theme his sons would later perfect on screen. His inability to provide conventional, stable success created a financial and aspirational vacuum within the family. That vacuum was filled with explosive force by Minnie Schonberg. Born November 9, 1864, in Dornum, Germany, Minnie was the undisputed architect of the family's destiny. Unlike the Marxes, Minnie's family, the Schonbergs, were performers. Her mother, Fanny, was a yodeling harpist, and her father, Levi, was a ventriloquist. This showbiz gene was Minnie's most significant inheritance. After integrating to New York, she watched her brother, Abraham Schonberg, transform himself into the vaudeville star Al Shean of the famous duo Gallagher and Shean. His success provided Minnie with a tangible blueprint, a model of fame and fortune she would relentlessly impose upon her own sons. Minnie became their manager, a shrewd and tireless promoter who cleverly operated under the pseudonym Minnie Palmer to prevent booking agents from knowing they were dealing with the act's mother. The Marx Brothers' career, therefore, was not a paternal legacy of trade, but a matriarchal project of performance. It was a direct consequence of this parental push and pull. The failure of the patriarchal Old World model of craftsmanship forced the success of the matriarchal New World model of entertainment.
Can you sleep on your stomach with such big buttons on your pajamas?
The family's Jewish heritage was central to their identity as outsiders. They were part of a wave of European Jewish immigrants in New York, and their comedy would come to be defined by its sharp critique of the Gentile upper-class establishment they sought to infiltrate. It is a common misconception that they were related to the philosopher Karl Marx. In fact, the surname is a common Germanized form of the Hebrew name Mordecai, adopted by many Jewish families in the 18th and 19th centuries.
The gate swung open and a Fig Newton entered.
How do you do?
The Marx family lived in a crowded tenement building at 179 East 93rd Street in the Yorkville section of Manhattan, a neighborhood teeming with Irish, German, and Italian immigrants. It was here, in what Harpo would later call the first real home I knew, that Minnie raised her troupe of future stars. The family consisted of 6 sons, though only 5 would survive to adulthood. Manfred Marx, born 1885. The firstborn son, whose life was tragically short. He died in infancy, likely from tuberculosis, before his 3rd birthday, though sources vary on the exact date and age. Leonard Joseph Marx, Chico, born March 22nd, 1887. The eldest surviving son, who would develop the persona of the charming, piano-playing rogue. Adolf Marx, Harpo, born November 23rd, 1888. The second son, a sensitive boy who would later legally change his name to Arthur in 1911 out of a lifelong dislike for Adolf. Julius Henry Marx, Groucho, born October 2nd, 1890, the third surviving son. A voracious reader, Julius found solace in books and initially dreamed of becoming a doctor, a goal that was dashed when he was pulled from school at age 12 to earn money for the family. Milton Marx, Gummo, born October 23, 1892, the fourth son, often described as sickly in his youth, who would serve as an early member of the stage act before finding his calling elsewhere. Herbert Manfred Marx, Zeppo, born February 25, 1901, the youngest brother, born nearly a decade after Milton, who would be brought into the act to maintain its numbers.
How much would you want to run into an open manhole?
Just the cover charge.
Minnie's project was all-encompassing. She pushed Leonard into piano lessons, discovered Julius's pleasant singing voice, and saw in all her sons the raw material for a dynasty. The family home was less a domestic sanctuary and more a rehearsal hall, the crucible in which the world's greatest comedy team was forged.
Haven't we seen each other somewhere before?
I don't think so. I'm not sure I'm seeing you now. It must be something I ate. I could dance with you till the cows come home.
Yeah.
On second thought, I'd rather dance with the cows till you come home.
I mean your eyes. They shine.
The Marx Brothers' journey through the grueling, unpredictable world of vaudeville was the critical, formative period where they failed their way to success. They did not begin as anarchic comedians, they began as a conventional singing group, and it was only through years of hardship, audience indifference, and one legendary moment of spontaneous insult that they discovered their true calling. Their iconic personas were not pre-planned but were forged in the fire of these difficult early years.
No, sir. This is special for Mr. Helton, sir. You see this?
The family's entry into show business began with Julius. In 1905, a 15-year-old Groucho joined a singing act called the Leroy Trio after answering a newspaper ad. His early experiences were harsh. In one instance, his fellow performers abandoned him penniless in Colorado, forcing him to work odd jobs to get back home to New York. Seeing both the potential and the peril, Minnie stepped in to take control. In 1907, she officially became their manager, forming the Three Nightingales, which consisted of Groucho, the younger Milton Gummo, and a girl singer named Mabel O'Donnell. The act was in constant flux. When a venue required a quartet, Minnie would pull Adolf Harpo from his job playing piano at a local cinema and thrust him on stage. The lineup and the name of the act changed frequently, evolving into the Four Nightingales. And, at one point, the Six Mascots, when Minnie and her sister Hannah briefly joined the performance. Their first taste of real structure came with the musical comedy sketch Fun in High School, around 1910. This routine, which they would perform for years, featured Groucho as a teacher with a thick German accent, a common vaudeville trope at the time, presiding over a classroom of unruly students played by his brothers. This marked their crucial transition from a pure singing group to a comedy with music act, but their defining comedic philosophy had yet to be born.
Yes? Ice water in 318? Is that so? Where'd you get it? Oh, you want some?
The group's eureka moment, the incident that revealed their comedic destiny, occurred in 1909 in the small town of Nacogdoches, Texas. During a performance at the local opera house, the show was abruptly interrupted when someone shouted that a mule was running loose outside. The entire audience, more interested in the runaway animal than the singing nightingales, emptied out of the theater. When the patrons eventually returned to their seats, an incensed Groucho abandoned the planned act and began to hurl ad-libbed insults at them. "Nacogdoches is full of roaches!" he sneered, adding, "The jackass is the flower of Texas." Instead of being offended, the audience roared with laughter. In that moment, the family discovered their true strength. It wasn't in conforming to the polished, predictable norms of vaudeville entertainment, but in shattering them. They learned that their greatest asset was their ability to break the fourth wall, to engage directly with the audience, and to embrace chaos, insult, and irreverence. This incident became the philosophical cornerstone of their entire career. They were at their best when they were at their worst.
And you can say it was a real love match. We married for money. Am I shrinking, Violet? Say, it wouldn't hurt you to shrink 30 or 40 pounds.
As their act shifted toward comedy, the brothers developed the iconic personas and stage names that would define them. The origin of these names is a piece of showbiz lore, a collection of colorful and often conflicting stories that are a form of performance in themselves, blending autobiography with myth. The most widely accepted story attributes the names to a monologuist named Art Fisher, who christened them during a poker game in Galesburg, Illinois, around 1915. It was fashionable at the time to give people nicknames ending in O, and Fisher dealt them out along with the cards.
Brooks, they're escaping. Follow me, man.
Groucho, the origin of Julius's name, is the most debated. One theory is that it came from his generally morose or grouchy disposition, a claim he denied for years before finally admitting to it late in life. Another popular explanation is that he carried his money in a grouch bag, a small pouch worn around the neck. Groucho himself often claimed it was inspired by a comic strip character, Groucho the Monk, though this is widely seen as a fabrication. The shifting explanations are perfectly in character for the evasive, intellectual persona he would adopt. Chico, Leonard was a notorious womanizer, or chicken chaser in the slang of the day, and was thus dubbed Chico. The spelling was later changed to Chico after a typesetter's error. His famous phony Italian accent, which became the bedrock of his character, was reportedly developed as a young man to avoid ethnic street fights in his neighborhood, and was later incorporated into the act at the suggestion of his uncle Al Shean. This story roots his con-man persona in a real-world survival tactic. Harpo, Adolf, Arthur. The most straightforward of the names, Adolf was called Harpo simply because he played the harp. More pivotal was his decision to become a silent performer. According to one account, after a critic wrote that he was a convincing fool until he spoke, his uncle suggested he try performing without talking at all. This transformed a perceived weakness into his greatest strength, framing his silence not as an inability, but as a deliberate, powerful artistic choice. Gummo, Milton. Milton's moniker likely came from his preference for wearing rubber-soled gumshoes, which made him stealthy. An alternate theory from Harpo suggests he was sneaky like a gumshoe detective. Gummo was the first to leave the performing act, enlisting in the U.S. Army during World War I.
Remember, you're fighting for this woman's honor, which is probably more than she ever did.
Zeppo, Herbert. He was the last to join the act. Herbert's name is the most contested. Groucho claimed it was derived from the German Zeppelin airships, which were a modern marvel at the time of his birth. Harpo, however, insisted he was named after a popular trained chimpanzee named Mr. Zippo. A third story suggests it came from a Zeke and Zeb joke routine popular in the Midwest. This ambiguity aptly reflects the younger brothers' an often underappreciated role within the group.
Why don't you go home to your wife? I'll tell you what, I'll go home to your wife, and outside of the improvements, you'll never know the difference.
After more than a decade of honing their chaotic act on the vaudeville circuit, the Marx Brothers stood at a crossroads. They were seasoned performers but had yet to achieve the kind of breakthrough success that would grant them financial security and artistic legitimacy. Their ascent to the pinnacle of the American stage on Broadway was not just a career move, it was a validation of their unique brand of comedy, catapulting them from touring headliners to national superstars and setting the stage for their eventual conquest of Hollywood. At the early 1920s, the brothers were nearly broke. An attempt to break into film with a self-financed silent short, Humor Risk 1921, was a complete disaster. The film was shown once and is now believed to be lost. Facing financial ruin, their fortunes turned on Chico's knack for deal-making. He brokered a deal for the brothers to mount a revue at the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia, where they stitched together their best vaudeville routines into a cohesive show with a thin plot. The result was All Say She Is, and it was an absolute sensation. The show's success in Philadelphia caught the attention of Broadway producers, and on May 19th, 1924, it opened at the Casino Theater in New York. It was a roaring success, running for 313 performances and transforming the Marx Brothers into legitimate theatrical stars. They were suddenly the toast of the town, embraced by the influential intellectual and literary circle known as the Algonquin Round Table, and championed by powerful critics like Alexander Woollcott, who became particularly enamored with Harpo. This embrace by the cultural elite was a fascinating paradox. Their lowbrow, anti-establishment humor was being celebrated by the very establishment it sought to mock. They had become court jesters for the jazz age intelligentsia.
Tell me who.
Their newfound stardom attracted Broadway's most prestigious talents. For their next show, The Coconuts, they collaborated with legendary playwright George S. Kaufman and iconic songwriter Irving Burley. The musical, which satirized the absurd Florida land boom of the 1920s, was another smash hit, opening on December 8, 1925, and running for over 2 years on Broadway and on tour. Their final Broadway triumph, Animal Crackers, opened in 1928. Also written with Kaufman, it ran for 191 performances and solidified the personas and routines that would soon make them famous worldwide. These shows were the apex of their stage career, combining their anarchic comedy with the structure and sophistication of first-rate Broadway production.
Hike of $500.
Well, that is all the cash I have with me.
$500.
Just as the Marx Brothers reached the height of their theatrical success, a series of external events conspired to push them in a new direction. The stock market crash of October 1929 had a devastating impact on the nation and on the brothers personally. Groucho and Harpo, who had invested heavily, lost their entire fortunes overnight. The crash also delivered a fatal blow to the world they had just conquered. The Great Depression decimated Broadway, forcing theaters to close and sending thousands of performers and producers looking for work. Compounding this professional and financial turmoil was a profound personal loss. On September 13, 1929, as they were preparing to tour Animal Crackers and on the cusp of releasing their first film, their mother and lifelong manager, Minnie Marx, died of a stroke. This confluence of events, the invention of talkies that could finally capture their verbal humor, the economic collapse that crippled their theatrical home, the loss of their personal fortunes, and the death of their matriarchal guide, made a permanent move to Hollywood not just an opportunity, but an absolute necessity. Their film career was born from the ashes of their Broadway success. The Marx Brothers' filmography is a tale of two distinct eras, defined by the philosophies of the two major studios where they made their most iconic films. Their journey from the pre-Hays Code anarchy of Paramount Pictures to the polished formulaic productions of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer MGM serves as a perfect case study in the evolution of the Hollywood studio system. This transition saw them trade raw, unfiltered chaos for structured storytelling, a shift that created some of their most beloved classics, but also fundamentally altered the nature of their comedy.
She gotta have you, because tonight she's gonna be engaged. Yes, going to be married. Mrs. Potter.
The 5 films the brothers made at Paramount represent the most direct translation of their stage energy to the screen. Featuring all 4 performing brothers, Groucho, Harpo, Chico, and Zeppo. These movies are characterized by a surreal, chaotic, and relentlessly anti-authoritarian spirit, made before the strict enforcement of the Motion Picture Production Code in 1934. Their first 2 films, The Coconuts and Animal Crackers, were direct adaptations of their Broadway smashes. They were filmed at Paramount's Astoria Studios in Queens, New York, a grueling process that required the brothers to work on set during the day and perform in Animal Crackers on Broadway at night. The limitations of early sound technology are evident. Cameras were confined to soundproof boxes, and paper props had to be wet down to avoid crinkly noises, giving films a static, stage-bound feel. Yet, they capture the raw, untamed energy of their live performances. Their next two features, Monkey Business 1931 and Horse Feathers 1932, were their first films written directly for the screen, freeing them from theatrical constraints. As stowaways on an ocean liner in Monkey Business, and as saboteurs of higher education in Horse Feathers, their comedy became more cinematic and relentlessly satirical. Horse Feathers, a spoof of the American college system and Prohibition, was a massive hit, their most popular film to date, and earned them a cover story in Time magazine. The culmination of their Paramount era was Duck Soup, 1933. A brilliant and biting political satire, the film lampoons nationalism, diplomacy, and the very notion of war with breathtaking absurdity. Today, it is almost universally regarded by critics as their masterpiece. At the time, however, it was a commercial disappointment. Its deep cynicism was out of step with the Depression-era America that was embracing the nascent optimism of the New Deal, and its chaotic structure baffled some audiences. The film's perceived failure, coupled with a change in management at the financially struggling studio, led to the end of their contract with Paramount. The legacy of Duck Soup is a testament to historical re-evaluation. A film deemed a failure in its time was later rediscovered by countercultural audiences in the 1960s and 70s, who saw its anti-establishment message as profoundly resonant.
You got the key. That's fine. Hey, wait.
Following
look.
their departure from Paramount, Zeppo left the act to become an agent, and the remaining trio, Groucho, Harpo, and Chico, found a new home at the most prestigious studio in Hollywood, MGM. There, they came under the wing of the legendary boy wonder producer Irving Thalberg. Thalberg had a specific diagnosis for what he felt ailed the Marx Brothers films. They had too many jokes and not enough story. He argued that their relentless gags often steamrolled each other and that their chaotic plots gave audiences nothing to root for. He proposed a new formula. 1. Make the brothers more sympathetic. Instead of being purely anarchic forces, they would now help a sympathetic young romantic couple overcome an obstacle. 2. Create a clear villain. The brothers would have a well-defined antagonist to play against. 3. Structure the plot. The stories would be more linear and logical with a clear beginning, middle, and end. 4. Incorporate lavish musical numbers. To take advantage of MGM's resources, the films would feature elaborate production numbers, often involving the romantic leads. 5. Test the material. Before filming, Thalberg had the brothers tour with key scenes, honing the jokes and timing in front of a live audience. The first two films made under this new regime, A Night at the Opera 1935 and A Day at the Races 1937, were quintessential examples of the Thalberg formula. They were enormous box office successes, far more profitable than their Paramount films, and are now considered timeless classics. They contain some of the brothers' most iconic routines, such as the legendary stateroom scene in A Night at the Opera. However, for many purists, these films represent a taming of the Marxian spirit, a dilution of their pure anarchy in favor of commercial appeal. After Thalberg's premature death in 1936, the quality of their MGM films declined noticeably. Pictures like At the Circus 1939, Go West 1940, and The Big Store 1941 lacked the creative spark and high production values of the Thalberg era, feeling more like tired retreads of a successful formula. Their final two films as a team, A Night in Casablanca 1946 and Love Happy 1949, were made largely to help Chico pay off his extensive gambling debts. Starkly hilarious. To understand their comedy is to understand how these distinct parts functioned as an indivisible, anarchic whole.
Come over here, I want to see you. Now listen to me, I'm not going to have that red-headed fella running around in the lobby. If you want to keep him up in your room, you'll have to keep him in a trap.
Groucho was the group's loquacious, intellectual center and its primary weapon against the establishment. His persona was instantly recognizable. The grease paint mustache and eyebrows, the ever-present cigar, the glasses, and the distinctive, stooped, loping walk. He was the fast-talking hustler, the fraudulent authority figure who used a relentless barrage of puns, non sequiturs, insults, and double entendres to dismantle logic and expose the absurdity of social conventions. His primary technique was weaponized language. He could break the fourth wall to address the audience directly, a holdover from his vaudeville training that was revolutionary in early sound film. His favorite target was the formidable Margaret Dumont, the stately dowager who appeared in 7 of their films. She was the perfect foil, the embodiment of the pompous, high society world that Groucho's verbal attacks were designed to deflate.
Well, the auction is practically over. It's all over but the shooting. I'll attend to that later.
In stark contrast to Groucho's verbal onslaught was Harpo's world of pure, silent pantomime. In his curly wig and tattered coat, Harpo was a creature of pure impulse, a childlike, mischievous, and often destructive force of nature. His comedy was entirely visual, drawing on the timeless traditions of circus clowning and mime. He communicated through a symphony of nonverbal sounds, a honking horn, shrill whistles, and a range of brilliantly expressive facial contortions, most famously the gookie. From his bottomless coat pockets, he could produce an impossible array of props, a blowtorch to light a cigar, a cup of hot coffee, or even his own leg to hand to someone. This chaotic exterior concealed a surprising and beautiful duality. Harpo was a genuinely gifted harpist, a virtuoso who had taught himself to play in an unorthodox but breathtakingly beautiful style. These musical interludes were not mere interruptions. They were windows into the innocent, ethereal soul of his character, providing a moment of sublime beauty amidst the madness. His silence was his greatest asset, allowing him to transcend linguistic and cultural barriers to become a universal symbol of pure, unbridled ide. Positioned between Groucho's intellectualism and Harpo's chaos was Chico, the street-smart con man with the phony Italian accent, Tyrolean hat, and unshakable confidence. He was the group's essential mediator, the schemer who could translate Groucho's high-flown rhetoric and Harpo's silent mayhem into deeply flawed, get-rich-quick plans. His comedy was rooted in the gleeful mangling of the English language, twisting words and logic in frustratingly circular arguments with Groucho. Like Harpo, Chico's musical talent was an extension of his character. He was a phenomenal pianist, but his style was anything but classical. He developed a unique percussive technique, often shooting the keys with his index finger as if it were a pistol. This flashy, virtuosic, and technically incorrect style was a perfect musical metaphor for his persona, a brilliant, entertaining, and utterly fraudulent showman.
How do you do? How do you do?
What are you doing here? I didn't know they allowed visitors here.
I'm a no visitor. We come to get you out. We gotta be quick, too.
Oh, thank you.
For decades, Herbert Zeppo Marx was dismissed as the superfluous fourth brother, a bland and handsome straight man who simply filled the role of the romantic lead. This assessment, however, misses the subversive genius of his contribution. Zeppo was not just a straight man, he was a parody of one. In the context of the zany musicals of the 1920s and 30s, which were populated by stiff, earnest, juvenile leads, Zeppo's wooden delivery and almost unnaturally cheerful demeanor made him a surreal presence. He was the crucial bridge between the audience's reality and his brother's insanity. Because he could pass as a normal person, he provided the entry point for their chaos into the respectable worlds of their films, high society parties, corporate offices, college campuses. He was the link through which the Marxian madness infected the conventional world. The ultimate proof of his unique value lies in his absence. In the MGM films, the studio replaced him with a series of professional, handsome actors like Alan Jones and Kenny Baker. None of them could replicate Zeppo's effect. They were simply actors playing a part, whereas Zeppo was a Marx brother pretending to be a normal person. And that subtle, crucial difference was impossible to recreate.
I love you anyhow.
I don't think you'd love me if I were poor.
The Marx Brothers officially disbanded as a film act after Love Happy in 1949. but their influence was only just beginning to calcify into legend. In the decades that followed, the brothers pursued divergent paths, with one achieving a second wave of stardom that would redefine his public image. Their collective legacy, however, remains rooted in that perfect storm of talent and history that made them the ultimate comedic voice for an era of unprecedented turmoil.
Can you come down a little bit?
The brothers' lives after the team dissolved showcased their varied personalities and skills. Groucho's second act, Julius embarked on a staggeringly successful solo career that arguably made him more famous to a new generation than the Marx Brothers act ever had. From 1947 to 1961, he hosted the wildly popular radio and television quiz show, You Bet Your Life. The show was a perfect vehicle for his wit. The quiz element was secondary to Groucho's hilarious ad-lib banter with the contestants. It cemented his persona as America's resident wisecracker and introduced him to the baby boomer generation, many of whom knew him primarily as a TV host rather than a movie star. This long-running solo venture detached his persona from the context of his brothers and ensured his singular place in cultural memory. Chico and Harpo, two older brothers, settled into a comfortable semi-retirement. Chico, ever the hustler, led his own big band for a time and continued to struggle with a lifelong gambling addiction that often left him in financial straits. Harpo made occasional television and stage appearances and, in 1961, published his beloved and critically acclaimed autobiography, Harpo Speaks. Gummo and Zeppo the businessman. The two brothers who left the act earliest proved to be astute businessmen. After his military service, Milton Gummo Marx became a highly successful talent agent, representing his brothers and other Hollywood stars, and also worked as a clothing manufacturer. Herbert Zeppo Marx, leveraging the mechanical skills he possessed since youth, founded a large and successful theatrical agency representing his brothers for a time. He later started an engineering company that manufactured parts for the military during World War II, making him a multi-millionaire.
Come back in a half hour and I'll give you another look at it.
The peak of the Marx Brothers' film career coincided exactly with the bleakest years of the Great Depression. And this was no accident. Their specific brand of comedy was the perfect medicine for a nation that felt its institutions had failed. In films like Horse Feathers and Duck Soup, they relentlessly attacked the very pillars of society that had crumbled: academia, government, diplomacy, and the wealthy elite. For an audience disillusioned by banks, politicians, and bosses, watching Groucho, Harpo, and Chico systematically dismantle and humiliate these figures of authority provided a profound and necessary catharsis. They made a mockery of pomposity and offered laughter as a vital antidote to tough times. They were the right comedians with the right act at the exact right moment in American history. The influence of the Marx Brothers on 20th and 21st century comedy is immeasurable and inescapable. They were pioneers who broke comedic conventions that others didn't even know existed. They blended sophisticated rapid-fire wordplay with primal slapstick, introduced a level of surrealism and meta-humor that was decades ahead of its time, and established the archetype of the wisecracking anti-establishment hero. Their comedic DNA can be traced through generations of entertainers. The creators of the Looney Tunes cartoons were direct descendants. Bugs Bunny's wisecracking, fourth-wall-breaking persona is pure Groucho, and he even donned the grease paint mustache and glasses on several occasions. The absurdist, non-sequitur-driven sketches of Monty Python's Flying Circus owe a clear debt to the surreal logic of a Marx Brothers film. The neurotic intellectual humor of Woody Allen is a direct evolution of Groucho's persona. From the zany antics of Jim Carrey to the sarcastic social commentary of Larry David, their influence is everywhere. They created a new language of comedy, and every comedian who came after them has had to learn to speak it.
It's my partner, but he don't speak.
Oh, it's your silent partner. Well, anyhow, you wired me about some property. I've thought it over. Now, I can let you have 3 lots watering the front, or I can let you have 3 lots fronting the water.
Thank you for sticking around and watching our Marx Brothers deep dive. If you have an idea of what you'd like to see next, maybe the Three Stooges, comment below. Until then, like, share, and subscribe.